Justin Gaethje back in the gym, put out a little training footage. It's him in there hitting the heavy bag. And there is truly nothing that Justin Gaethje can do right now that isn't interesting. I ran into him on a street. I ran into him on a street at a Bellator event where he was a corner man. And it was interesting. Like when I saw that, it was Justin Gaethje. Like there was just something interesting about it. What's he going to do next? Is he coming back? Where? Like Gaethje's one of these guys that I have been awaiting an announcement that he's leaving the weight class to go to 170 for like 4 years. And not only have I been not given the announcement that I've been awaiting, nobody's even talked about it. I've never even heard a rumor about that. Like this is all within my head. But when I look at this big solid guy, and I also look at a guy that appears to have done everything you're going to do at 155, right? And then you have stars in the sport. And it's a very rare, small group of people. Now, before you go and line something up for Gaethje, do you wait to get through this weekend? Like, is Dustin Poirier at play? And I try to think of that and I go, yeah, that's a big match. And everybody would like that match. Or do we wait a little bit longer? And you see if Conor has a good return against Chandler, and then you talk to Conor, like, you don't become a master booker. I get texts from people. I get DMs from people like, hey, can you get me a job at the UFC? Listen to this card I would put together. And they're serious. And they'll put the biggest star against the biggest star, the biggest star against the biggest star, the biggest star against the biggest star. Like, anybody can sell a Ferrari. I'm trying to get a Volvo off the lot. But when you go to Justin Gaethje, it does appear to be an interesting situation. Like, we have never had a fight. And never is a literal statement that has been as celebrated and is talked about after the fact without the suggestion of a rematch. It has never happened. I can even go, you want to know the single biggest, whatever, I'm missing a word here, but number one for match that was talked about after the match, the single was Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. And all anybody talked about was a rematch. And it's a small observation, but nobody's talking about that with Justin and Max. And I wonder if that's not a miss. Like when I look at Gaethje at 155 pounds, like if I'm to treat him, and by the way, I don't treat him, and I don't think he should be treated. If I am to treat him like everybody else, then if I'm going to put him in a feature match of a pay-per-view, he has to be somewhere along a trajectory towards a title fight. No matter what that path looks like, it has to exist. And if it doesn't, I am not putting him on a feature match in a pay-per-view. And there's not an exception that you're going to be able to find out there, right? It's very disciplined. But before you think there's not a trajectory for Justin, I get him a title match right now against Max. I feel like everybody would sign off on that. And I don't predict for you that that's the direction we're going to go. What I'm attempting to prove is I just got you to go, yes, Chael, you're right. You could give Justin a feature title match against Max right now. Okay, great. But once I get you to say that, you no longer can say there isn't a trajectory for Justin to a title shot. You lose that ability, right? You can't agree to what I said about a rematch with Max and then make the statement there's not a trajectory. It's an interesting spot, though. Like, Gaethje's one of those guys, and nobody calls him out. And it's not just because of the rough and tumble night. It's a massive respect factor. Like, when John Anik tells you that Gaethje's your favorite fighter's favorite fighter, there's a lot of truth to that. It becomes a problem particularly if you're a younger guy. And then if all of a sudden Dustin Poirier became available, just to pick a name, all of a sudden they become available, the stakes do change. I mean, the last time they fight that leveled the playing field, but there was a championship up. And that wouldn't be in the next one. And it just seems to me that if you were to look for opportunity, I think that you could find, right, if we're doing matches to have fun matches, if we're doing matches because we respect a guy, if we're doing matches because that's your favorite fighter and you can't wait to see him, then you'd be looking for the biggest matches that you could make with other guys that meet that same criteria. And I think if you could couple in 170 pounds. I like the idea that Conor and Chandler at 170, just for example. Like, I like that idea. If we're not fighting for rankings and we're not fighting for titles and we're not in elimination matches, we don't need the confines of a category. And it's just a thought. It would be unlike Gaethje to come out and call somebody out. But he has done it before. He did it to Khabib. He called out Daniel Cormier publicly one time, not for a fight, but he called him out publicly for a commentary he had. He called out Dustin Poirier, if you'll remember, for the rematch. It's not completely something that he would not do. And it seems like as long as Max is available, that is a direction that if Justin wanted, that he could pursue. And I get a little bit lost, much like you guys, in what is next for Max. And while we would all bet dollars to donuts that it's going to be Topuria, it's not as simple as you think. Is it going to be Topuria for the featherweight title? Is it going to be against Topuria for both titles? And is it going to be Topuria because nobody else has spoken up? Like, you're leaning towards, no, I want Max versus Topuria. You want Max versus Topuria because it's the only thing that's been suggested. And I think that it would be an interesting debate. And either way is a title shot for Max. It doesn't matter if it's for the 45-pound or if it's for the BMF. And we continue to have fighters that call for the Sphere. I want Mexican Independence Day at the Sphere. And those fighters that are calling for it are not Mexican. And I don't know if that makes a difference or what kind of rules we're putting on that feature spot. But when I hear Conor McGregor really wants the headline spot, Sean O'Malley really wants the headline spot, it's one of those things where those guys are going to need opponents. Going to the Sphere, Justin Gaethje versus Max, BMF title. Am I missing something here?